Joining us now, Congressman, Republican, 9th District, Virginia, that Southwest Virginia area from Salem, Virginia. Congressman, good morning.
Good morning. How are you this morning?
Never better, because the Republicans staving off another would-be catastrophic blue wave disaster with Troy Balderson prevailing, it appears, by about 1%. He's got a 1,700 vote lead. They're not going to overturn that with provisional ballots, so I expect him to win. He's got to go right back after it in November. But I want to get your take here, because you're a pretty astute political observer. The Democrats look like they had a shot to win this seat. They had an early lead. They got a lot of the early balloting out, but the Republican prevails. Do you read anything into this, sir?
Well, I don't think there's any question that the Democrats are intense. They are after the president. They want to hold on to what they've got in the Senate, although that's going to be very difficult, but they want to take the House. And they're going to do everything they can, and they're spending money everywhere. And they know they've got an intensity factor. The Democrats will show up in large numbers in every race across the country this year, and the Republicans have been lackluster. And when I'm talking about lackluster, I'm not talking about the organizations. I'm talking about people, they're happy with their tax cuts and jobs are improving and they think everything's great. And I hear it all the time in my district. People go, well, there's no problem. We're going to win. And I'm like, yeah, not unless we show up, not unless we spend the money, raise the money, spend the money, organize, have people out there working. We win these races when people engage. But if they, are thinking everything is hunky-dory and fine, we lose. And you pointed out earlier that we've got some races in Virginia, Dave Brat in particular, where his rural areas are going to have to turn out, because otherwise they're going to end up with a liberal representing them in Congress. And even though that area may be unhappy in the suburban areas with President Trump, they really don't want some of this new left stuff that's coming out, and people don't realize it, but that's where the Democrat Party's going. If they get a wave, Nancy Pelosi may not survive because they'll want somebody more liberal than the San Franciscan.
That's interesting. Everybody says if she doesn't survive, because it's going to be a moderate that steps in. Of course, you look across the scope, and there really is no moderate that has emerged. But I want to get to the Nancy Pelosi factor, because some Democrats I talked to yesterday, off the record, off the record is off the record, as you know, were really rumbling about the fact that Nancy Pelosi was costing them these elections, that they named a couple of them where she became the number one issue. Karen Handels in Georgia. I think there was a guy in Tulsa or somewhere in Topeka, Kansas or something. I forget. But they named 3 races where the Republicans spent all the money at the end running against Nancy Pelosi for Speaker. And they were like, absent her, the Democrats would have won these. How big of a drain do you think she's going to be on the Democrats as they try to take command of the House? Congressman.
Well, I think she will hurt in districts where you do have rural voters, where you have people who still hold the conservative values. Then she's a negative. The problem that she's going to have is a lot of these folks who are getting elected are they are Democratic socialists, or even if they don't claim to be Democratic socialists or socialists, they certainly are for Medicare for all and a lot of socialistic type ideas. And so as a result of that, they're going to want somebody that agrees with them more, and they're going to try to move that party to the left. There's no question about that.
So in Virginia,
she may be a drag, but whoever they put in after her is also going to be a drag in those districts.
The other thing, the fact that, you have candidates, even some that come on my show, and I say, are you going to vote for Pelosi? They say no. But that doesn't matter, because Pelosi has already said, if the Democrats take the House, I am going to get elected Speaker. I have 50% plus 1. So it doesn't really matter what anybody says. I'm going to be the Speaker. So I don't think there's any question there. But let me just ask you this. Let's just look at Virginia right now. You're in the 9th District. I've got 3 seats as of vulnerable. Barbara Comstock, 10, Dave Brat, 7, and Scott Taylor in the 2nd. My rating right now, most vulnerable to least, goes Dave, Barbara, Scott Taylor. Am I accurate, or do you have a different view?
I would think that Barbara would be more vulnerable than Dave. There's no question they don't like Dave. He has been a leader on the right. And then Dave has the problem that he has the candor Republicans who may very well stay home. I don't think they'll go out and vote for the Democrat, but they may say, I don't really like Corey Stewart, and I'm still mad about Dave Brat beating Eric in the primary. And if they stay home, then Dave may be the most vulnerable. You may be right.
It's going to be interesting to see how that turns out. Got a text here from Paul in Mechanicsville. He said, John, I'll give $1,000 to any cause you want if Corey Stewart loses by your prediction of more than 150,000 votes in Northern Virginia. Well, maybe it's not going to be 150, but I'll tell you this, Paul. When I ran the Trump campaign in Virginia, I lost those 3 cities in Northern Virginia, Fairfax, Arlington, and Alexandria, by combined 142,000. I think Gillespie got beat there by about the same amount, and Corey Stewart's going to do worse. When you lose 3 cities in Virginia by $1.50, I mean, there's just, I don't know, Congressman Griffith, maybe you can help me figure this out, but I mean, when you're losing these 3 cities by 150,000 votes, you just can't make it up. It's a big number.
It is a big number, and it's very difficult to make that kind of a number up. We've got to try to do it, and hopefully there's been a little bit of a shift as some of the Democrats in the Obama administration have moved back to Massachusetts and California, but it's not 142,000, I can assure you that.
Yeah, that was a big number.
There may be a little bit of a shift there, but it's going to be tough.
Okay, let's get to tariffs. The president tripling down now on China tariffs, outlining another 150 billion in tariffs. And our view, as you know, on protectionism and what the president is doing is that he's basically playing a game that he can't lose because we have the consumers, we have the buying power that they want, where we have a trade deficit with the Chi-Coms of almost $550 billion annually. That's $550 billion more of our money going to them than their money comes over to us. Now, having said that, obviously some financial markets are getting squirrely on it. They're getting a little bit upset. What say you?
Well, I think that's right, and I think that there's going to be a little bit of pain involved, but you're right. I think we hold the upper hand. If previous administrations, both Democrat and Republican, had been a little bit more aggressive towards China, maybe they would have come to the table with a better deal. But basically we said, hey, it's fair game, just take whatever you want of ours, and the Chinese are going to do that. They're not stupid, and they realize that after they gave up being 100% government-controlled and let a little private ingenuity come in, their economy has taken off. Now, if you look at China today, they've got serious problems in their stock market. They're trying to encourage everybody to stay in the market. Their country's economy is it's not collapsing, but they've got serious concerns because they cannot afford a long-term trade skirmish battle, however you want to put it. I don't think it's a full-scale war yet, but we're getting there. With the United States, they can't afford it. And their government would be in serious trouble if their economy collapses completely. They know that, so at some point they're going to have to come to the negotiating table. What Trump has to do is to figure out a way to let them save face. Saving face is very important in the Chinese culture, and he's got to figure out a way to have the United States win and say it's a tie.
That's an interesting concept. We hadn't really thought of that, and very difficult for the president to do, as you know, because he's going to want to claim total victory and capitulation. But I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. Let them save face. Look, the object of the tariff is not to do a tariff. The object of protecting your industries is to create jobs for the U.S. and bring the trade deficit down and get your manufacturing back. That's the goal. It isn't to just say my tariffs are bigger and I won, right? So you got to keep your eye on what the objective is. And so you're advocating that the president do that. And we're going to talk a little bit about China's involvement in meddling with our midterms, because a lot of their retaliatory tariffs are aimed at some of our Midwestern states where we might have some vulnerable Republicans there. Now, Congressman, let's get to Iranian sanctions. I mean, I got to tell you, whatever you think of this president, he doesn't mess around, right? So he's doing these tariffs. I mean, the sanctions with Iran, he's not allowing his administration to give waivers out to various companies. But the other thing that he's done here is he's saying that any company that does business with Tehran is not going to be allowed to do business with the United States. I mean, that's pretty harsh. Even the original sanctions didn't go that far. Do you think it's a step too far, or do you think the president is handling this the right way?
Well, this is one where only time will tell. I do think you have to be tough with the Iranians, particularly with information that they might not be doing everything they're supposed to be doing, even under the agreement that was a bad agreement. It also sends a message to the rest of the world that if you enter into an agreement with the President of the United States, you better make sure you have congressional support, because the President's able to do this because President Obama did everything that he did without congressional support. So it's basically just with the President's authority. Without a treaty that's ratified by the Senate, the deal is not, it's not really a deal. And that's what people in the rest of the world need to realize. We do have a republic where the Congress has a role to play. I think that's very important. But I think the President is probably on the right track, but this is a very difficult area, and I'm not getting the daily briefings that Mike Pompeo and the President are getting. But I will tell you, as a former seatmate on the Energy and Commerce Committee with Mike Pompeo, I would trust his judgment on that.
Congressman Griffith, if the Republicans hold on to the House, and I think you are going to maintain the majority by maybe 1-3-5, something like that. Have you made a decision? Have you committed to anybody that you would vote for Speaker as of now?
Well, a lot depends on what happens in the election. I've not made any public commitments, and I like both of the candidates who are out there now. But, we have a 1-vote margin. That might change my opinion. We have a 5-vote margin. That might change my opinion. A 25-vote margin. And so you have to take a look at where we are on the morning of November 7th after the election is over. How many seats do we have, and who would lead that particular majority the best? Obviously, Jim Jordan is a friend, but I also count Kevin McCarthy as a friend.
So you're saying one of the things that's going to determine who you might support as Speaker if the Republicans maintain the House is what the margin is, right? 7 might be different than 1. So that might change your opinion about who might fit that role better. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. I will tell you, until we know who the players are and how many votes we have, it's very difficult to make a firm, final decision because, let's say that we all get shocked, and I don't think this will happen, but that it's the conservatives who lose and the moderates all win. Well, then if you only have 7 or 8 votes, you can't afford to have those moderates always working with the Democrats because they don't like the Speaker. Now, I think that the conservatives are going to be the ones that hold on, and it's going to be some of the moderates who find themselves in trouble. But we don't know that until November 7th, and I think it's a little early to be making solid, firm, entrenched commitments on the Speaker's race.
All right, I'll buy that, Congressman. Final question. Lame duck Speaker Paul Ryan has said that he's going to try to get a vote before the November elections, the midterms, on extending the tax cut permanently for individuals like they did for corporations. True or false?
I think that's true. I think he's going to try to do that. Whether he succeeds is yet to be seen, but I think he's going to do everything he can to bring it to a vote.
All right, I've got a minute. You're in the 9th District out of Salem, Virginia, more of a rural area than some of your contemporaries have. As you go and talk to people, and I know you do all the time, when the tax cut comes up in your district, what are people saying? Are they saying what the Democrats are saying, which is like, I'm getting crumbs, or are they excited about it? What feedback are you starting to get?
They like it. I was talking to some businesses yesterday. Things are going great. I was at the hardware store over the weekend, and a retired officer who works at the hardware store says, I don't know what Nancy Pelosi's talking about. I got more money in my paycheck, and it wasn't crumbs. And I didn't go in there asking him questions. I was in there buying a hose. And he just volunteered. He said, Morgan, I want you to know this is what I think, and this is what I hear from my friends.
All right, that's it. We're out of time. I want to thank Congressman Morgan Griffith for being with us. He's up for re-election on November 6th, 9th District of Virginia. Congressman, what's your website?
Well, we've got Morgan Griffith for Congress on the election side, and then on the official side, if you have an issue or a problem, it's morgangriffith.house.gov.